Okay, this is SIG Node CI subgroup meeting. It's Monday, August 24th. Hello, everybody. So yeah, let's take into topics. First three topics suggested by Morgan. We can either try to parse it out or start with next topic and then get back. I would suggest we will start with later topics and then we'll get back. Okay, next is mine. So I've been looking at this. Do you want me to share screen or you can follow the document? Which one is better? Any opinion?
It might be better if you share it for folks that look at the recording later, maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. Okay, and I will make it fit the screen. So it will be better. So yeah, let's get into this topic. I've been looking into like right now some feature flags. We'll try like there are pull requests in Kubernetes repository to remove feature flags, and one of them is to remove feature flag from startup probe operation. And part of the PR, it was moving end-to-end test and into different files. I was looking into like what is that, and I realized that. We have this test area called not kubelet serial, and there is a not kubelet serial alpha. So they're different between, so regular serial doesn't include any alpha features, and this one include alpha features only, and it has startup probe flag set to true. So presumably that needs to run startup probe end-to-end test. But it turned out that it doesn't run anything. This like entire alpha area doesn't run any tests. So it's empty. So I was looking into, I mean, historically, somebody just removed, like when startup probe moved from alpha to beta, this flag was removed from tests. So it's it stopped running. But then I looked into, yeah, no worries. I looked into another test, and like, for instance, we have this test, CPU manager serial test. And this test, for some reason, is not reflected on this test like on the chart at all. So let me open test grid really quick. How to move this? So if you look at kubelet and we look at alpha. I'm sorry, Zoom Windows closing part of the screen for me, so it's a little bit hard to navigate. Wait, serial alpha. Yeah, this one. This one is completely empty. So I'm just curious if anybody knows the history of this alpha node, like alpha tab, and do we need to put like make sure the tests are running as part of this alpha? Like, can be something wrong with the filtering?
I can share some general comments about the CPU manager. We definitely want that to run. If I look under the working group resource management tab, it is there. And I think I was looking at the job now to see if it actually ran and ran any tests. What I suspect is, yeah, okay, the test is running. Okay, I suspect it's just that, you know, CPU manager used to be alpha. I think it's actually beta now, and it really should probably go to GA. And I think that's one of the SIG Node, the document that Derek sent out. And I think I did see some people sign up to be interested to help get that to, you know, GA from beta. So I suspect what it really boils down to is just that job needs to be updated, at least to go from alpha to beta. Because I think it's, yeah. So probably maybe just we need an issue to track that to get the job updated. for that
I
specific
remember,
one.
this is David. I just want to say the CPU manager, I remember it was under the alpha, serial alpha tab before, but I sent a PR to remove the alpha tag from it because it wasn't an alpha feature anymore. And I think the reason that that tab isn't showing anything is because there's no more jobs that are like tagged alpha basically that are also serial test. The last one that was there was the CPU manager, but it has its own section under the working group thing, as you mentioned.
Yeah, probably two things. We should probably get it out of the working group resource management tab and put it under SIG Node and update it to beta, which I think should be pretty simple things.
Okay, do we need this serial alpha tab at all? Since it doesn't run any tests, it just runs like startup test environment and tears it down. Should we just remove it?
It might be useful if there are some new features coming on that would be alpha. I don't know, maybe maybe David, you have some input on that? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like I said, the only other test before was the CPU manager. I'm not sure how common it is to have tests that would fit into that category or not, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, we also have this kubelet alpha, and I'm not sure what's the difference here, like serial and kubelet, like regular kubelet.
Quick comment on the previous one. So if you go back to test grid and if you click anywhere and open up a spyglass page, read through the logs, every time if you click on the skip 4,000 and something lines, right below the show all hidden lines thing, or show all hidden lines, there's gonna be some text in blue that's gonna appear somewhere around like line 300 and something. And if you keep scrolling down, at some point it's gonna show up. Can you?
It's blue.
Yeah. So usually the blue is when Ginkgo says, "Okay, we have this test, but we're gonna skip it for some reason." Can you skip? Can you keep scrolling down, please?
SS.
There should be something that says CPU manager serial blah blah blah. It's gonna match exactly the same string that you have in the doc.
Yeah, it seems that like David said that he removed this flag, so maybe my source code is a little bit outdated. I'll need to double check that.
Or at least what I was going for is I'm looking at a run from I forgot what day it was, but I'm looking at a run and it says SIG Node CPU manager serial feature CPU manager node alpha feature CPU manager, and it listed as skip, and it is skip because quoting skipping CPU manager test since the CPU capacity is less than 2. So maybe this test is it's another one of those that just has possibly a messed up a messed up configuration for the test, which for additional context. So Node E2E test, they have two pieces of configuration. One of them is the brow job, which is the thing that Sergey was showing up a little while ago. The other one is on test in the test infra repo in jobs, under jobs under E2E node, and that one also specifies how the job is supposed to be run. And yeah, and at least this one, I forget the exact fields that are available to this, but it seems that this is just running with the default image, which I'm not sure that it has more than 2 CPUs.
Okay, so your suspicion is that the CPU manager just didn't show up because of incorrect configuration?
Possibly. So every single E2E test, it has at least every every node E2E test has 3 pieces of configuration. So the proud job is that one that you have on screen. Can you could you just to show the other one? Could you open up another tab on test infra, please? And test infra, not test grid, please. Sorry. And if you go to the jobs subdirectory right from the root.
Okay.
Jobs and then E2E node. If you compare the proud job in the proud job configuration, there's one that says node args image config file, and then for node serial alpha, it specifies that it is using the file that's in this repo that's called image config serial.yaml, and these files, if they don't specify a machine size or anything or anything of the sort, it's using the smallest VM that GCP offers, which I don't remember exactly the specs of it, but it might possibly be too small. So in that case, the third piece of configuration in E2E jobs is kicking in, which is possibly the test framework, which is code that lives in KK, and often the way that it works is if the test framework checks the environment, and if it fails for some reason, if the test environment is not what it expects, then it just skips, and that might be the reason why this job is not running. So TLDR, it might not be running because we are not using the proper VM for it, which could be another possibility.
Yeah, I can create issue to investigate. What bothers me is that the only feature gate here is the startup prop true. And I would expect like for CPU manager also needs to be enabled, right?
Possibly. Or at least looking at the name, every single feature gate should be enabled.
Yeah, I would expect this. Somebody wants to say something? Okay, so I would expect that the alpha test will enable a bunch of feature gates, and I was surprised to see on the startup prop here. Okay, so I will create issue to investigate, and we can discuss inside the issue. But if there is no serial alpha test any longer, we can just remove this area for now and then restore it when needed. Right? Okay, and I also wanted to ask, is there any knowledge, and I think it's somehow related to Morgan question, is there a knowledge which test we run and which not? Do we have any statistics on like, or any tools that will validate that like some tests in Kubernetes end-to-end is never run as part of test grid?
To my knowledge, there is nothing like that. There is an issue that that's open in the project board for documentation, and Amin actually made an Excel sheet of all the possible of all the Ginkgo tags that we have available. I can post it in here, but overall, if there is, I think it will be useful if anyone is interested in building something that could answer this kind of question.
Okay, so there is no tool. Okay, do you want to go next, Jorge?
Yes. So the next 2 items, I just wanted to put them in here just to propagate knowledge. So this week, this week in the release team is actually going to start pulling all the levers for releasing 1.19, and this is useful for now, and it's going to be useful in the future. all the schedule for every single release is it's always going to be up in in a similar place as the link that I posted in the notes under the SIG release repo in releases and then the specific release. And I guess the TLDR for this team is if you while you're working on some test or something, and if you see something that's wrong and you think that is going to affect people using Kubernetes, please ping everyone, just to make sure that the signal gets back to the release team in case that something release blocking is actually hiding in somewhere in the logs or test grid. And I guess quick stop, since I have the next bullet item. Does anyone have any comments, questions, suggestions?
So in test infra, pretty soon we will switch to 119 conformance, right? So we don't need to, the only test we will run for 119 is conformance test. It's not like whole test grid. Is it correct?
I need to look at it, but yeah, essentially the other thing that also comes into play is I think that right now the master branch of Kubernetes is still frozen. So if anything that is that doesn't have the 119, so for example all the other jobs that don't have a specific release, they are most likely running against the master branch. And if something starts, if any failure starts showing up in one of those jobs, that will also be one of those things. It will be good to collaborate with the release team and just ping them like, hey, this suddenly broke yesterday.
Yeah, but in a week we will start merging all the 120 PRs, right? So testing will probably also will start conforming to 120 PR master.
Yeah, most likely. Sometime soon.
So Jorge, that's, I mean, is there a way to know which tests are from the conformance list nowadays in the dashboard?
Usually the thing that I've seen that most people do is they usually in E2E jobs, for example, SIG Node kubelet, that is an alias for an E2E job. They the thing that I seen that most people do is that they explicitly state that is conformance. So, for example, SIG Node kubelet conformance 119. Other than that, I think. And this is completely an opinion. If we have any jobs that they are running a conformance test suite, and it isn't obvious, I think we should probably rename them or put some explanation in test grid to make it more obvious.
Okay.
So everything marked as not conformance back in 119 branch, right? So we're not increasing this scope.
In the 119 branch, and also anything that doesn't have a specific release, because it is very likely that if it doesn't have a specific release, it is running against the master branch, and the master branch it's frozen, so it is still kind of in sync with the 119 release or with the possible 119 release.
Got it.
Does that make sense? So other than that, does anyone have any more comments, questions? If not, because I hear silence, the last item that I added to the list was just another invitation for people to come and take a look at the project board. I think a reasonable pace to not over task individuals and to not rely way too much on heroes, because there are a handful of heroes throughout Kubernetes that do a lot of work. I think it will be reasonable to every now and then for people who are interested in doing more work here, just go through the issues. If you see anything that you find interesting, please ping people in there, ask them questions. And the only other thing that I think I can add to this is to always ask questions to make sure that you understand what is going on in that issue, because if you don't understand it, there is a very good chance that someone else doesn't understand it, and in that case, just explaining something out, writing documentation, or anything that gives us an explanation, I think that will be a good contribution to the project. And other than that, I apologize because I feel like I've been talking for a while.
Okay. Thank you for reminding everybody about issues. I would suggest we go back into first items. Morgan's still not here, but some of these items are very interesting. First is kubelet master and kubelet conformance. Seems like duplicates. I think they are, to the extent, duplicates. Anybody know the history, or it just, I mean, do we just need to investigate it?
I think we also may need to investigate this one. It just feels wrong. The fact that the conformance and the normal master job are exactly the same, because that kind of implies that every single thing, every single feature that the kubelet has, it is a GA and conformance ready, which is, I don't know. It just feels weird. Like it's way too nice to be true.
So conformance test is something that will be tested on ongoing basis after release, right? So once release is done, the only end-to-end tests that running are conformance tests.
Not always. Technically, people can set up their jobs in whatever way they want. So if you go through previous branches, you don't only have conformance, and it is good to not always have conformance, because conformance are the features that went from alpha, beta, stable, have been stable for a while, and they are completely, and they are not, and the tests for them are not flaky, and like the set of jobs that meet all those requirements are relatively. They are a good chunk, but they are definitely not all of the jobs. For example, anything in conformance is ignoring anything that is in beta, and beta features, they should still be stable, I think, hopefully.
Okay, and a related question to this was, we're still trying to investigate all the blocking, like SIG Node blocking tests. I wonder, do we need to repeat all the conformance tests there, or conformance tab will be this similar, like separate tab that we just want to look at separately? Like, does anybody have an opinion? So remember this tab that we created? I mean, we haven't created it, it's still in PR, but basically we want to put, we want to answer the question from last meeting, saying, if a person is not a part of SIG Node, can I ask quickly whether SIG Node is okay or not? So we're creating this SIG blocking tab dashboard, and we want to understand, like, we want to answer the questions is whether SIG Node is okay or not, and we want to understand how we can add tests into this dashboard. So we're definitely adding all the release blocking tests there. Now there are different tests we need to understand. Like one is, for instance, in topology manager, and it was marked as high in the document that we started with, this Excel spreadsheet. I think it was marked high because it was very important for Victor specifically, and Red Hat, because it was like very important feature. But I mean, in general, it's a great feature, and we need to, like, if it's failing, we need to make sure that it's like SIG Node is not healthy, right? So we need to notify everybody. So I would assume we need to put it into SIG Node blocking.
Yeah, I would say, you know, when I did the spreadsheet, I think we had mentioned this before, I put it aside because I think it was just important to me. But typically, I mean, that topology manager test is really, that whole feature would, I think, be used by customers probably more in the telco environment on bare metal, and probably not used by a vast majority of, you know, Kubernetes users in general. That's just my sort of take on it. And, you know, so when I think about, hey, is this important? I think it's important probably for a much smaller subset of customers. And I don't know that it would, you know, sort of justify putting that as a blocking test for SIG Node, because I don't think there's going to be a large number of users using that feature. Now, it's important to us and important to Red Hat and probably, you know, NVIDIA and Intel and some of their customers, but you know, that spreadsheet was that priority or importance thing was our first take at it, and maybe it would be good to review that just to say, hey, what does the community in general think? Because that was, I think, just a subset of folks, and I know I marked some on there, and there's probably a bunch of blanks on there too.
So I want to propose a kind of a process for all the blocking jobs. I think everything that we work on, we as in SIG Node, should eventually land on node blocking, because you know, if a feature is important to one user or another, is that's always probably going to happen. But if we are we're maintaining this piece of the project and everything, in the perfect world, everything should work. And if something is not working, let's assume that we have 10,000 users and only 5 people actually use the topology manager. If the topology manager is not actually working for those five people, that is something really important that we should take a look at, independent of the number of users.
You suggest to put something in blocking based on number of maintainers of this test. So if we have enough maintainers for the test and who vouch for it to be blocking, then it will become blocking, and then we will review this maintenance commitment regularly. Is it what you propose?
Yeah, and to add to that is, like, I think there has to be some commitment to actually maintain things, so that we don't end up with a job that has been failing for 3 years and no one seems to mind. But we also should aim to have every single end-to-end. I think we should have a similar end to the conformance test, like every single end-to-end test that is assigned. It is assigned with the goal in mind that at some point it's going to end up in the conformance list. And every single, I think it should be similar to this. Like, every single thing that we do, we should aim to at some point be blocking, because I feel like that kind of signals people that we are working on this area of the project. We are actively maintaining it, and if something breaks, that means something. If the job breaks, that means that something Kubernetes broken. We need to fix it.
Victor, what do you think about this proposal?
I guess there's one part that if there's any test failing, we should fix it. And I have to admit, I was sort of multitasking. And
original proposal was to include tests into blocking test based on maintenance commitment. So if you, Victor, saying I'm up for watching this test and we need to put it in a blocking test, and then we will review this commitment periodically and remove it from blocking if needed, if you don't have a critical mass of maintainers.
So that's saying a blocking test is only can be blocking, or a test can only be blocking if we have people maintaining it. Otherwise, it's not.
Yeah, I think maintenance suggests importance, right? So it's let's yeah. I don't know how it will work. It's kind of neat idea. It's just saying that when people care about the test, meaning that it's important. If nobody cares about tests, then like maybe it's less important. So let's say we have dynamic config end-to-end tests. Nobody cares about dynamic config because people rarely use it, and nobody will probably want to maintain it and like fix bugs if any. So it will automatically, like in the lack of maintenance, it will go out of blocking tests very fast.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could buy into that. I mean, it's just I don't know sort of the process in the past that was used to determine what would be release blocking or you know, merge blocking. Do you know what the criteria was for that in the past? Anyone?
So from my understanding, you know, like everything, this is a little bit subjective, but what becomes merge blocking and release blocking are just whatever SIGs think that it is important, and under some kind of model, if people are, I'm gonna keep using the topology manager as an example because I know that is a feature that's in the works. But if people are working on the topology manager, then people want to use the topology manager, and in that case, any test that test the topology manager, they should, if the tests are stable, if the tests are stable and they provide good signal, they should probably be some level of blocking. You know, for example, if the feature was in alpha, then it might be good to still have him as release blocking, because if those tests break, then that means that we introduce a regression or something bad into Kubernetes and we need to fix it. But I guess the TLDR is what ultimately becomes blocking is relative. It's subjective. It's subjective, but in a way we should be aiming to work to make everything that we do blocking, because otherwise it kind of sends a signal that we are working on this enhancement, but it can make that it can be that this enhancement doesn't really work. It can even be the case that enabling this enhancement is actually going to break Kubernetes, and we are okay with breaking people, which I don't think is a good message.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Breaking users is not good. Yeah. I don't know that I have. I don't know that I can provide any more insight into what should be blocking or not at this point.
The only other comment that I can add, since we mentioned merge blocking and release blocking, is if we label something as blocking in our section of test grid, then it is kind of only like a hope that we are working towards. In order to actually make something release blocking, we also need to put in the SIG releases test grid. And in order to make something merge blocking, we need to put it with a bunch of merge blocking jobs. So technically, like right now what we are doing right now for a lot of jobs, I think they ended up in the blocking section. But this is kind of I think right now this is more aspirational, and it kind of sends a signal within this area of the project that these tests are good, these tests are being maintained, and if they go red, then that means something in Kubernetes broke, not necessarily that the test is not well configured or something.
Makes sense. Okay, so I think we're still walking around this issue, like what we want to like how to filter out all these 106 test cases, and like how to group them into what we really want to watch right now, what we want to watch periodically, and what we don't really care about that much. So you're saying like there is no like what do we want to care about that much category, but we don't have a clear signal or like agreement how we can mark something as release blocking, something that will be like the source of truth, like whether SIG node is healthy or not. I don't know how to proceed, like how to mark, like how to continue marking tests as a blocking test.
So
Yeah, I think it would, you know, it comes back to sort of just understanding at a pretty good level what each of the tests are currently doing. For example, like the, you know, the conformance test. I mean, I think that's just doing some basic tests that if they fail, it's bad news. And some of the other stuff, I mean, even like CPU manager and topology manager are really optional, and they're not on by default. So, you know, if we use those as examples, does it make sense to have something like that blocking? I don't know. I think when I think about what I go about, or one way to go about determining that is, again, to have a really good understanding of what the tests are doing and what part of that functionality is, I'd say, must work. You know, I guess you could make a point, well, if it's in there, it should work, and if it's not, then make it blocking them. That would be one extreme. Yeah, I'm not sure other than doing a review of all the tests, and which would probably take a few folks to do that and get their input and sort of decide from there. There may be other ways too. That's just sort of what I would think.
And from a review perspective, you're suggesting that if tests like topology manager is a stable test, right? But if we believe it's not covering too many customers, it's not blocking. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, here's like that. For example, that test, you really the tests are pretty much skipped unless it's on a multi-NUMA system. So, like for example, when we run it upstream, those tests are not really doing anything.
Okay.
Because we don't have a multi-NUMA system, and there, at one point we were looking to say, hey, you know, upstream, can we get a system with multi-NUMA nodes and you know, spin up pods and verify alignment? So what we have downstream tests that are doing that on bare metal, and we do pay attention to those. And if they fail, you know, we push fixes upstream. So that's maybe a unique example. That's probably not specific just to the majority of the other tests, in that it, you know, requires certain hardware.
Okay. And I'm not trying to pick on you. I just like another example will be runtime class. Like you probably have some tests on runtime class, and not everybody using runtime class. So do we need to make it as blocking or not? I'm just trying. Sorry, my Windows is misbehaving.
Sorry, just to finish my proposal, because I think that's a good example. So what I was trying to get at is that, for example, with runtime, let's say that even though 3 people might be using it, we worked on it. We as a collective SIG node, we are telling people, hey, you can use this. So if we are telling people that, hey, you can use this, even if it's not conformance, GA or something, we should treat a test as a measure of stability of the code that we wrote. And in that case, to actually make my proposal actionable, I think it will be that every single test that is actively being maintained, that it is being green and it doesn't flake too often. I think that will be a good candidate to add to blocking. If it fails every now and then, and that is frequent, then we should either fix it or remove it. If it's failing, if it's constantly failing, same thing, we should fix it or remove it. It would essentially like every single job should hopefully end in test blocking. And if they have been green for a while and they have people working on them, then they are good to be added. If people are now, I think those are 2 cases. So we have a job that's green, we have a job that is not green. The third scenario that I imagine is that someone is working on a new feature. They add a new job, a new test, and the tests are not stable, or you know, they might fail every now and then because people are working on them right now. and in that case, just those jobs should stay on should stay outside of blocking until those jobs are stable enough to be added to blocking. What do people think?
Okay, so you just basically agreeing with Victor, we just need to review every single test and one by one add it to blocking. And we need to end up with all the tests being either blocking or not being present at all.
Yes, and just taking out that part of I guess just kind of putting aside how many people actually use a feature or not, because I think that will get us in a weird place where we are, where we just kind of start. I don't know what's a correct word for it. I think that's I think like taking into account how many people actually use a feature, which is something that was mentioned. I think that will be I think that will be a weird thing and will and could lead to areas of code being ignored.
Okay, I think it's a good proposal. I really like it. Okay. So we have two more topics. One of them, like in 10 minutes left. So one of them, the link to some document from a past. I think it's a proposal how to rearrange tests. I would suggest we can take this as a homework for the next week and like read it carefully and try to discuss it next time. So since it was added to agenda Friday, I would suggest to just put it into agenda of next week. Any objections? Anybody knows the document to the heart and can talk about it?
Yeah, I haven't seen it or looked at it either. And I guess Morgan is not here. I pinged him on Slack and I didn't get a response. So maybe it makes sense to push that to the next meeting.
Okay, and the only area left is how to like Docker and Docker shim test versus Docker and CRI tests. So the question I think is how many tests we like. Do we have a parity of how well we test containerd and Docker shim? This is how I understood the question. And I think it's a very important topic to start testing containerd as wide as possible and on as many tests as possible. If anybody on the call has a knowledge on like history of this question and how much we test on containerd, how much we test on Docker shim, it will be great to if you can talk about it.
I am not familiar with it. Maybe, again, maybe we can reach out to Morgan. It looks like Morgan probably put some thought into it.
Yeah, put in some conformance test, like a test that validates probes, like liveliness probe. It will be really nice to make sure that we run it for both, for containerd and Docker shim, and like they at least have a equal priority. So maybe Morgan can speak about it next time, or we can investigate it as a part of an issue talking about containerd test area, like in general. Okay, so we only have 9 minutes left. Any other topics people want to discuss? I will move these two topics to the next meeting. Okay, so let's discuss, like we have few action items to discuss and investigate. I will create issues for them or make sure that there are issues. Let's meet next week and maybe we'll have more information. At least we have some agreement on how to treat SIG node blocking, and I really like that we have it. Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, if no more topics, let's finish just a little bit earlier than I needed, and happy next week, like happy new week, I guess.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Yep. See you guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, bye.